Okay. All right. Oh, that's being recorded. Okay. So this week's Parsha is Parsha Mishpatim. First of all, it's a very special Parsha, this Parsha. Today's Rosh Chodesh, and we have also Parsha Mishpatim. We have Parshat Zachor. Are we up to Zachor? And so there's a lot of important things. But we have, last week we had the 10 Commandments. Of course, that is like huge. Everybody stood up and showed it was so nice. And this week it's Mishpatim, which also deals with the laws. And the first law that's discussed is the law about how to treat a slave and then the slave's wife. And these are Jewish slaves. And after 6 years, the slave is allowed to go free, but they can choose to stay with the master. The slave, a Jewish slave, was enslaved because of something that he did, stole something. And so it's another way for him to have like restitution of this sin. During that time, if he's married, the master has the responsibility of taking care of the wife of the slave. She's not actually the slave, she's the wife of the slave. And it's interesting, like, you know, why the master would have that responsibility. And it's assumed that the reason why this happened is because the slave, during the time that he's with the master, probably could not provide for his wife, since this is the source of his income. He's working now. So the master has that responsibility. And sometimes there is a maid servant that's brought into a slave relationship. And it's assumed that either the master or someone in the master's family will then marry that woman. So it's interesting, like here we are, a Jewish people, and there's different opinions about to what extent a husband should provide for a wife. It gets into that discussion a little bit, financially or not financially. But it's clear that there is a discussion here about the responsibilities of both a master to slaves, and also wives to husbands to their wives. And the Torah, even though it's not so explicit, the rabbis realize there might be husbands that might not take on the full responsibility of taking care of their wife and even their children. So it's discussed more details than what's in the Torah. The rabbis go on to discuss this. And you know, thank God we have our Torah and we have our laws. And even for families that is not just assumed to be everybody's going to be taken care of, we actually have laws that very explicitly discuss this. Rabbi Sachs asked, why did the Torah start with right after Matan Torah and right after the giving of the 10 Commandments? Why is it that the discussion of something clicking here, not sure what it is, but why is it that there is a discussion of slaves? Like, why is that the first thing? If you know, if it was so important, why do we even have a discussion of slaves? Why didn't God just say there should be no slaves? Here we were taken out of Egypt, we were slaves, so that is probably why it is the first thing to be discussed, because it was such an important part of our time. And we knew that this was going to happen from the time of Abraham, because Abraham and Hashem discussed the fact that there's going to be a period of time where the Jews are going to be enslaved. So it doesn't just like happen. This was like discussed, it was outlined way before it actually even happened. So why is there slavery, and why is it that God just can't, just like he did a magical thing with the water and made it part, why can't he just abolish slavery? And Rabbi Sachs said that after a big discussion where he brought in many philosophers and psychologists, that having freedom is a difficult thing within your own person. really to be free. And it's something that the world needs to really work out. That physically we have to, just like we needed to experience slavery to understand freedom, we have to work that out. So God can give us rules of how we should be better masters, or how, with the limitations of a slave, and the limitations of the time of how long somebody can be your slave. And, and then it's up to man to come to the point where he realizes that this is not a good institution, and to try to build within ourselves the kind of freedom that the world needs, and the kind of respect that people need to have for each other, and working out the freedom within ourselves. That it's not something that's going to be God given to us. This is something that the world needs to work on. I want to wish everyone a good Shabbos and a Chodesh Tov. And Michael Klein will now lead us.
So welcome to Torah R Radio. We're going back to the 1970s. And you heard him go. Thank Shabbat, thank Shalom, Ba'ir Yerushalayim, V'teimanu Shad Malchut, K'tzot Shebein Arbayim, Thank Shalom, thank Shabbat, Ba'ir Yerushalayim, Thank Shabbat, Thank Shalom, Ba'ir Yerushalayim. Thank Shalom, Thank Shabbat, Ba'ir Yerushalayim. Today we're going to move on to Chun Rananah in honor of Rav Persky Zatzal. We're going to change the tune a little bit. Chunir Ranina Ladonai Nario Ezer Yishaynu Nikadima Pana Bizoda Bizmiro Nario Gado Adonai Melchado Elohim Asher biyado mechirei aretz v'talachot arim lo Shelu hayam b'lasol v'bashir v'sobot shvachim v'chol v'chol v'nei anim v'yoseinu v'yoheinu anachnu v'smoat hakru v'achnu v'rakim asav v'nivar shem simi avodechem b'chan yigarum chali Arbim Shana Akubidai, Bamaram to Ewe Bavim, the Haim, waited to Racha, Yashanish Bati be happy, Yimibabu no Menuchasi. Shiru Adonai Shir Chadash, Shiru Adonai Koaretz, Shiru Adonai Baruch Hu Shemo Sabru Miyom V'yom Yeshuato Sabru V'goyim Et Kivodo V'chol Amim Nivliyotav Ki Gadol Adonai U'Milal Me'od Norahu Al Kol Elohim Ki Gogoe Amim Elohim Ba'adonai Shemayim Asa Hod Behadar Wifanav Hod Behadar Wifanav Oz V'Tiveret B'Mikdasho Havu Adonai Mishbechot Amim Havu Adonai Kavod Ba'oz Havu Adonai Kivot Shemo Mincha uvo chatrota v'shtachavu Adonai v'hadras kodesh chivu mivanav kol avzei Zimru Bagoyim Adonai Malach Tikon Tevel Baltimot Yadinamim B'Meisharim Yismichu Hashamayim V'Tagel Haaretz Yiramayamu Milo Yotzadai B'Chol Asher Boaz Yiranenu Kol Atzeyar Livnei Adonai Kiva Kiva Vishvot Haaretz Yishvot Hevel B'Tzedek Ve'amim B'Yemunah So V'nim Malach Tagel Haaretz Yismuchu Yimim Yisa, which we found Kewech, to hate Sarab, Sarab, here Rakam Tabel Rataba, Zakaloret, in Kadana, Masimumi Adam, everything called Tigushamin, Siko, Brokon Kodo, Yeshigo, Dave herself. I mean, the window in Shahuko, in Shama, Smaxion, but again, a bit of Sida, Mamish Batahadin. Ki Adonai El Yonagoretz Miyodnawe Sako Elohim O Avei Adonai Sinura Shomer Nafshot Chasidav Miyad Rishayatzileim Arzaru Tzadik Uyishrei Simcha Simchu Tzadikim Adonai V'hodu Zecher Kodsho Mizmor Shel Adonai Shir Chadash Ki Nivot Zesah She'elohim Min Yisrael Vacho V'yadonai Shir Adonai V'yadonai 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 Zecher Chasav V'ntolo V'yisrael V'av Kol Asei Aretz V'shivat Elohinu Hariyu Adonai Kol Aretz V'tzchu Ranu V'zameru Zamru Adonai Bechinar Bechinar V'kol Zimra B'chatzos Rod V'kol Shofar Hariu Ibnei HaMelech Adonai Yiram Hayam U'miluot Hevel V'yoshvei Niharodim Chalchav Yachad Harim Yiranenu Lifnei Adonai Kiva Lishvot Aretz Yishvot Hevel B'Tzedek Ve'amim B'Meisharim Adonai Machir Avim Karim Niraret Adonai Medishim Bavdovin Arashu Vazim Nafara Yevadapna Sharistach Yaakov Asit Ruach Shavodam Kovashu Masharam Chana Adushma B'Kreshima Kernal Adonai B'Yanein Ve'amuranon Yidaber Aleichem Shamiru Edasa V'chod Nasan Lamo Adonai Eloheinu Ata Anita Mel Nosei Hayita Lahem V'nokei Ma'avilotam Romimu Adonai Eloheinu V'ishtachavu Lehar Kodsho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Zmor David Havu Adonai B'nei Elim Havu Adonai Kavod Va'oz Havu Adonai Kivod Shimo Tishtachavu Adonai Be'abras Kodesh Kol Adonai Alamayim Elakavod Yirim Adonai Elmayim Amayim Rabim, Ko Adinai Ba'Koach, Ko Adinai Behadar, Ko Adinai Shover Erzim, Vayishaber Adonai Yisrael Yavanon, Vayarkidain Kimo Egel Levanon, Besir Yon, Kimo Ben Reimim, Ko Adinai Chosei Lavadesh, Ko Adinai Yachil Midbar, Yachil Adinai Midbar Kadesh, Ko Adinai Yachal Vayachasav Yarod Uvechalo, Kuo Merkavod, Kuo Omer Kavod, Adonai Omavu Yashav, Vayeshav Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Ozliam Oitein, Adonai Yivarech Hazam Vashalom. Anabiko achgidu asimin chotatir tziruro kabel rinat amcha sagbeinu tareinu nora nagibor der sheichutcha kevavat shamreim Barchaim Tahareim Rachameim Sidkarcha Tamid Gamileim Chasim Kadosh Birov Zuvchana Hel Adatecha Yachid Gieli Yamecha Pnei Zochrei Kiddushatecha Shavateinu kabel Ushma tzakateinu Yodeya Pnei Shabbat Nikabila, Wichadodi, Wikra Kala, Pnei Shabbat Nikabila, Shemar Bezachar Bedibur Echad, Tishmiyan Well Amiyuchad, Adonai Echad, Ushimo Echad, Ushemu Tiveret V'Vitiva, Wichadodi, Wikra Kala, Pnei Shabbat Nikabila, Wichadodi, Wikra Kala, Pnei Shabbat Nikabila, Wikrat Shabbat Wichugan Elcha, Yime Kar Habiracha, Mirosh Mikadem Nesucha, Sof Maseb Machshava Techiwa, Wichadodi, Wikra Kala, Pnei Shabbat Nikabila, Wichadodi, Wikra Kala, Pnei Shabbat Nikabila, Mikdash Noach Yirmelucha, Kumitzi Mitocha Habecha, Rav Lach Shebed B'Yemek Habecha, V'hu Yachmal Arai Yichem Ladanana Dadada L'Chadodi, Wikra Kala, Pnei Shabbat Nikabila, L'Chadodi, Wikra Kala, Pnei Shabbat Nikabila, Na'ari Me'afar Kumit, she big day to Fatechami al Yad Ben Yishai Beit Halachmi Karbael Nafshigi Allah Lechadoti Wikra Kala B'nei Shabbat Nikabila Lechadoti Wikra Kala B'nei Shabbat Nikabila Hitoriri Ki ba orechu mi uri shir daberi Kibod Adonai alayich nigla Lichadodi Wikra Kala B'nei Shabbat Nikabila Lichadodi Wikra Kala B'nei Shabbat Nikabila go table she go di go mi ma tish to ge ma che mi bo ge zu wa ni ya mi ve ni ni zo yi rao ti wa da na 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 we ga do di da na na we grass ka ya na na Pnei Shabbos Nikabigo V'hayu Im Shisa Shazayich V'rachaku Kol Mivalayich Yasis Alayich Elohayich Kimsos Chasan Al Kalo V'chado Di V'gas Kalo Pnei Shabbos Nikabigo V'chado Di V'gas Kalo Pnei Shabbos Nikabigo Yoni Usmol Tibrotzi V'yas Adonai Tariti Al Yadi Yishben Barti V'nismecha V'nagiwa V'lado Di V'gras Kala Pnei Shabbos Nikabigo V'chado Di V'gras Kala Pnei Shabbos Nikabigo Bowie Vishalom Materas Balagan Berina Uvitala Tochamuneyam Sigula Bowie Chala Shabbos Malkisa Wichado Di Wigas Kala Pnei Shabbos Nikabila Wichado Di Wigas Kala Pnei Shabbos Nikabila.
And thank you again, Michael. A pleasure as always. Everybody can unmute themselves. We have a small group today, but that's okay.